Good evening, dear viewers. This is Cases. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia follows its own brand of Islam called Wahhabism, an ideology that developed in the 18th century. Wahhabism promulgates a strict form of Sharia law that is largely unwritten but powerful in the kingdom. Religious leaders have gained much powers in the past years, and with that putting more restrictions on women's rights. The country's male guardianship system, for example, treats Saudi women as legal minors who cannot conduct official government business, travel abroad, marry, pursue higher education, or even undergo certain medical procedures without the permission from their male guardians, a father, husband, brother, or even a son. Women cannot drive, protest, or even establish independent organizations to address women's rights, as the kingdom bans protest and does not permit non-governmental human rights organizations to operate freely. But lately, Saudi women decided to stand up for their rights, as they started launching campaigns that defied the ban on driving. So will we see more of that? On the other hand, Saudi Arabia's record of breaking its promises to improve its human rights practices raised serious questions about its fitness for membership in the Human Rights Council, despite the fact that it signed important petitions such as CEDAW that gives wider range of freedom to women but never applied it. We will be joined in our studio by Rita, Chemaly, an author and human rights researcher, and from London with Rodney, Shakeaspear, political analyst and chair of the Committee Against Torture in Bahrain. Hello and welcome, Rita, to Cases.
Thank you.
Of course, we will take a look at a short report that would give us more information about today's episode, and we will be right back. Dear viewers, stay tuned.
44.78% of the whole population faces social, economic, and political discrimination in one of the most patriarchal societies in the world. Indeed, the legal system in Saudi Arabia is firmly restricted by the Sharia, through which religious clerics, strictly from the Wahhabi school, exercise power and oppression against women. For instance, no law prevents women from driving in Saudi Arabia, but driver's licenses are not issued to women there. In response to that, Saudi women started the Women to Drive campaign in early 2011 in social media.
When I shipped my car from Saudi Arabia to Dubai, I didn't change the plates because I'm planning very soon, inshallah, to take this car, driving myself back home to Saudi Arabia.
Recently, as the campaign has become popular among a large segment of Saudi society, the movement called for women with international driver's licenses to drive on October 26, 2013. In this regard, women defied the ban and published online videos of themselves driving the kingdom's roads, including footage showing Saudi men driving by and giving the thumbs up sign to show their support. However, few days before October 26, more than 100 clerics visited the royal court, the office of the king, to protest the conspiracy of women driving, as one cleric called it. So the Interior Ministry issued a statement on October 23, warning the officials would enforce the law on October 26 when women were to drive. Outrageously, Saudi authorities arrested 14 women for driving in the kingdom on October 26, 2013, Al Madina Saudi newspaper said. The discrimination against women exists also in the workplace, in terms of pay and career, and in shopping malls. In this context, the Arab News reported last October that a group of young men harassed and verbally abused 5 young women at a Bahrain mall. The video of the incident went viral, causing widespread anger and calls for new laws to counter sexual harassment. The question now is, when will Saudi women be treated equally?
Rita, it is said that Saudi women are slowly calling for reform inside Saudi Arabia. Have these calls that are happening lately resulted in some kind of a tangible results on the ground, or we are still looking at a closed society?
In Saudi Arabia, it's typically a traditional society, what we call a patriarchal society where usually the man is the breadwinner, the women just have to stay home, cook, do all kind of duties related just to the home and the education of the children. As we have seen in the report, and as you have just said in your introduction, women cannot go out.
Yes.
And as we have seen in the report, women usually in Saudi Arabia cannot drive. There is no written law for women not to drive. But this ban is just a social ban. People just say that women shouldn't drive, and once also a fatwa was released for women not to drive. But in fact, what we are witnessing is a great challenge to this patriarchal society. Women have said, no, we have the right to drive. We don't want to rely on relatives, on men relatives, or on foreign drivers for them to take us to take.
Which most of the time is not even safe.
Which is not safe, which is costly also, because some women also complain that
they cannot afford
They cannot afford paying foreign drivers, and the foreign drivers are eating their salaries, because if they just want to take the children to school, to buy some groceries, they cannot go out of the house if they cannot drive. So what we're witnessing, the late campaign that was relaunched. It's a slow reform from the ground. It's not a reform, an institutional reform yet. It's just a reform from the ground. But in my opinion, it's a great challenge to what's happening, because they made something happen.
Do you think that it's the beginning of more challenges or more reforms that they would ask for in the future? It began with a driving license or permission to drive, and therefore it will, with the days to come, they would actually accelerate their own questions and ask for more.
Perfect. What we're witnessing and what we're watching on Facebook and on social media is that those women have, on the 26th, for example, the day of the big
October
campaign,
26th,
on
yes.
October 26th, what we have read is that, okay, we are driving today, we are trying to go across and to go beyond or what is permitted,
defy the ban,
defy the ban. But what we're asking is for more freedom, is for women to enter in public life, is for a change, for example, of what we called the system of male guardianship. This is what we read, and so therefore this new campaign is a big door open to other campaigns for women to ask for their own rights.
Yes, because Rita, if someone wants to look at the case here, it's not, driving is not the most important thing for women. I mean, there are other rights that comes before that question, which is supposed to be having, they are supposed to be having a major solution for it.
Perfect. For example, citizenship right in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has already ratified the CEDAW, the Convention for Elimination of all kinds of discrimination against women. But Saudi Arabia has made reservation on Article 9, Paragraph 2, that is related to citizenship. Women in Saudi Arabia cannot grant citizenship to their children or neither to their foreign husband. This is one of the biggest rights
challenges, definitely. And as you highlighted, they should begin somewhere.
Yes.
Okay. Rodney Shakeaspear, political analyst and chair of the Committee Against Torture in Bahrain, joining us from London. Hello and welcome to Cases, Mr. Rodney.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Rodney, how would you describe the social situation of Saudi women today amid their increasing calls for rights inside Saudi Arabia?
The problem in Saudi Arabia is that Wahhabism allows second-rate, incompetent men to go into positions of power and then to stay there. And when they are there, they suppress the other talent in the men. And in particular, they suppress the biggest source of talent in Saudi Arabia, which is the women. And they do that because they are cowards. They are scared of dealing in a straightforward, honest way with other men. And in particular, they are scared of dealing in a straightforward, honest way with women. But it's worse than that. behind Wahhabism is a view of women as being below them, and at the same time, the Wahhabistic men are sexual perverts who like whipping women, and they like, because they are bullies and cowards, they like bullying women.
Okay.
And because they are bullies and cowards,
yes,
they like controlling women. They ought to be ashamed of themselves, not least because they are suppressing the greatest source of Saudi culture.
Yes.
And the future of Saudi Arabia, which is in the women.
Yes, of course, our viewers have the right to actually express their own opinion. Mr. Rodney, according to Freedom House study, women's rights in Saudi Arabia came in last in almost every aspect. We're speaking about politics, their involvement in the political life, in the civil life, and economic and legal rights for women. How can you define today the rights given to women inside Saudi Arabia? What kind of rights?
What kind of... What was the question?
Yes, Mr. Rodney. If there are rights to be given to Saudi Arabian women, what are these rights that the Saudi monarchy gives women?
Well, in a very fundamental way, the Saudi monarchy does not wish to give any rights to women. It would rather that women were completely and utterly controlled in every aspect of their lives. People talk about driving, but what about political rights? What about the simple right of having a straightforward, decent conversation with a woman? What about ensuring that women have some measure of economic independence? And what about ensuring that the natural talent, the intellectual talent and the moral talent of the women is manifested in the jobs, and that the women are given the posts in the political structure? And how about giving the women posts in the religious structure? Because you see, Wahhabism is one of the means by which these cowardly Saudi men suppress the women. Those are just a few of the rights that should be given. But I look forward to the Saudi women subtly influencing the sensible men. And when the women start talking to themselves, they will find ways to impress upon the Wahhabists that they're out of date, medieval, barbaric people, and they ought to go.
With the fact that Saudi women today are actually beginning somewhere to call for the reforms, even if the pace, we're speaking about slow pace here. But do you think that it's the beginning for more reforms to be applied inside Saudi Arabia, as long as one of them stood up and called for one of the million rights that you highlighted, which is a driving license or the ability to drive?
There always has to be a start.
Yes.
And yes, there are some brave women there. But what must really happen is the women of Saudi must start talking amongst themselves. The men will try to stop them. And that is the sign that they are scared and they are failing. But as the women talk amongst themselves and devise ways of influencing men and punishing the men for their outrageous, oppressive behaviour, the time will come when suddenly all the women are ready for major change. And then it won't be one woman driving a car, it won't be 14 women, it will be all the women, and they will suddenly break out into the open.
Of course, no matter what restrictions it's being placed by the monarchy by itself, because we know that some of these women, which are about 40, that tried to actually break the law and drive on October 26. They were caught by the government, and of course one of them, of course they had to pay penalties, certain amount, probably $80 or a certain amount of money for breaking the law. Rita, a report issued by Human Rights Watch states that Saudi authorities continue to suppress or fail to protect the rights of 9 million Saudi women and girls. Is that the real thing going on, or do you believe that there are more devastating stories stories that are happening behind the walls that actually the press does not know anything about. Even Human Rights Watch or even other international organizations do not really understand or do not have the ability to actually check if these stories are taking place or not.
It's true that in the Wahhabi society or in this patriarchal society where women live behind the doors, we cannot go in the houses and witness what's happening behind the doors. So therefore we cannot know what actually is happening to all those women and girls, and also to the migrant workers who live in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, who are subjected to various harassments by the Saudi men.
Yes, first there is this system, I'm talking institutionally, there is this system called kafala or sponsorship.
Yes.
This sponsorship regarding those domestic workers and migrant workers working in Saudi Arabia, they are directly linked and tied directly to their employers. This let a lot of abuse come through. So first, domestic workers and migrant workers cannot change jobs or travel abroad and go back to their countries without the prior approval of their employers.
Yes, and probably because there are no rights that actually protect the kafala system or even those coming under the kafala system, these women, migrant women workers who comes in Saudi are subjected to...
They are subject to many forms of exploitation, discrimination, like for example rape, sexual abuse. Some people like confiscate their passport, they take their wages. This is not just the case in Saudi Arabia, but because we live behind the doors, we cannot see and witness what's happening. Some stories have been passing through the media. Lately we have watched and witnessed some videos of, for example, women beaten,
distorted images,
tortured, and this was horrible to see. This is what we can witness and what we can see. But it's very important to know that some brave women have spoke out. They wrote books. They went to the streets, even though protests are banned in Saudi Arabia. You said it in your introduction. Protests are banned. Organization, the right to create organization is
which is a simple right for every individual.
This cannot happen in Saudi Arabia. But what we are witnessing is that women and men who are truly who are open-minded and who want this society to be more liberal and developed, what they are doing is that they are using social means like social media to open up, to be able to create alliances, networks, and be able to create movements.
Of course, we'll speak more about this important point here. Rita will take a first break in today's episode. Dear viewers, stay tuned.
Women's rights redefined.
Welcome back, dear viewers. According to Human Rights Watch, Saudi authorities should immediately release a male journalist who expressed support to Women to Drive campaign. Human Rights Watch also highlighted that Saudi authorities are retaliating against people who want a very basic right for women. Saudi news website As-Sabaq said that police officials said the officers had pulled over at least 18 women driving in various areas of the country. So as you highlighted, Rita, obviously people, or even men, and that's the weak point here, that it's not even women supporting women, but men supporting women in their own campaign. Of course, through the video, we saw a man in other car with this thumb up sign, as if he's complimenting the fact that this woman broke the law and actually practiced her minor right of driving. So obviously here they are having a support of men and also taking it to the social media. How effective will this be, in your opinion?
In my opinion, when people are have found a way to break the law and to find things that are to defy their right and to defend their right, they will happen. Something will happen. We have seen that their husbands, their sons, for example, the son of Manal al-Sharif, Aboudi, Wajih al-Huwaider brother, if I remember, all of them helped them. They filmed those women in their cars while driving because they were happy that they broke the law.
And it's very important for women to have the support of a man when she is breaking the law. Today, of course, we saw them holding banners and writing banners. And these banners were held by men and they were supported by men in doing it. Would that give them more power to continue the path?
Yes, because when they are not breaking a law, they are breaking a social, patriarchal society's norms.
Exactly.
Those norms are not written. That's why this is very important for them to speak up and to be supported by their male counterparts.
Mr. Rodney, of course here, how dangerous is it today that these laws, if I may call them laws, or even the banners, or even these kind of royal decrees, how dangerous is it when they're not documented, or they're not part of a constitution, they're not part of documents that are clear to public, where everyone can know the right today? I mean, the issue of driving is either issued by a fatwa or by a royal decree. So therefore here, the Saudi citizenship do not have a reliable book to go back to in order to know what is forbidden and what is not, because suddenly it will be issued by a royal decree.
Well, firstly, I do not think you should use the phrase breaking the law, because no decent people recognize what is called the law in Saudi Arabia as being anything of the sort. It is, in fact, as you both have been pointing out, essentially a social mores or a social custom which is done by practice, backed up by force, by religious assertion, and all the cowardly ways. In Saudi Arabia, they wouldn't dare pass a law which has the approval of every single woman in the land. They wouldn't dare pass a law that has the approval of every man. There is no vote whatsoever at all. These are not laws. These are arbitrary decisions designed to reinforce the position of a bunch of cowards. And they're second-rate cowards because all the talent is in the population, not in them.
Okay, but Mr. Rodney, what is pretty much shocking here, at least to the public or even to the viewers watching, is that Saudi Arabia is a strong ally to the US. The United States that calls for democracy on a daily basis, if I might say. And the Saudi women today are not hesitating in actually sending their own pains to the public and even to international media, of course reaching to the US and to the Western societies. However, we haven't witnessed a major criticism by the US and Western allies to Saudis concerning these women.
Please don't talk to me about the USA as being a democracy. There is huge rich poor division, as the same as in Saudi Arabia. They can say what they like. Yes. The fact of the matter is, all sensible people know that they are moving straight forward into fascism. Do you know that there are 2 billion dum-dum bullets purchased by the American government to blast apart their own population? Do not talk about democracy. You've got 47 million on food stamps. You've got every American is spied on and listened to. There's soon going to be 20 to 30,000 drones over Americans. Got nothing to do with terrorists. It's to do with fascism. The USA is a bankrupt, corrupt, fascist state which is ultimately controlled by Zionism. And all these words like democracy, nobody believes it anymore. The USA is only there at the moment by military force. It has no moral
and probably
authority
that's
in
the
the
major
world.
reason why
It's
they're not
losing all its
intending
physical
to
authority in
impose
the
any
world.
kind of sanctions on Saudi Arabia for banning their women or banning Saudi women from their essential right. I'm joined by Aly Zonneveld, co-founder of Muslims for Progressive Values, joining us from Los Angeles. Hello and welcome, Aly. Aly?
Yes, hi.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Cases, Aly. Aly, do you think that Saudi women today have understood that the restrictions on their lives justified in the name of religion has nothing to do with Islam?
First of all, your voice is very distorted. I can't make out the question, but if you can prove the...
Okay, let me repeat it for you, Aly. I'm asking if do you think that Saudi women today are actually aware of this image that the Mutawars or even Saudi government is trying to implement? Are they really understanding that this is not the real Islam?
It has nothing to do with Islam, and the fact that these people are using religion to control and to take away the Muslim women's rights is un-Islamic in itself. And I think the problem is that they should probably go back and start reading the Quran again. Because if anything, the first feminist was Prophet Muhammad himself. He was a defender of Muslim women's rights. The Quran defended women's rights. And the first converts to Islam were women and the poor. And the fact that this is really about power. This is about disenfranchising women. And Islam was the one that was trying to redefine the rights of women in the Arabian Peninsula. And this whole concept of women driving in Saudi Arabia being un-Islamic is such an oxymoron to Islam. These mullahs, they need to go back and read the Quran. They need to, and what they're doing to Islam is disgusting. What they are doing in the name of Islam is an insult to Islam and to Prophet Muhammad's work.
Okay, Aly, can we say today that Saudi women are aware and pretty much aware that these restrictions placed on their lives, and as I said, justified by the name of religion, can we say that they are aware of that? They actually know exactly what Islam is about, and that's where they started from, and that's why they wanted to actually revolt. Because at one point, there are certain interpretations here of Islam and not real Islam is applied.
No, look, I think Saudi women are becoming more educated, and hopefully they will become more educated about Islam in itself, reading it for themselves, and thank God for the internet. I'm not sure what other restrictions are in Saudi Arabia as far as access to the internet. I think there is a lot of controls. However, the fact that back in the days you had Muslim women who were fighting in the front lines with the men. It was the women who taught the men about Islam because, again, it was the women who were the learned ones. But now we have forgotten that history, and a lot of that history has been forgotten because it has been written off, because it is so male-centric, it is very dominated by men. Yes, and this is done intentionally so. And this is an argument, and this is a fact that not just Muslim women, but Muslim men also have to come to terms with, and all of us as Muslims, we have to relearn this history.
Of course, speaking about Sayyidah Khadija, of course, the wife of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, it was through her that Islam was spread, and that's a major idea that Saudis should understand. It's not only men doing the whole thing here. I say again, Rita, is it because of awareness? Do you sense this kind of awareness among the Saudi women now?
First, Saudi women who are leading those campaigns are very well educated. Many of them have traveled and studied abroad also. Yes. this is why they can revolt. This is why they speak up. This is why they ask for their own rights. But what they still have to ask about are their public rights or their political rights. This is non-existent in Saudi Arabia, even though in 2011 by a royal decree also a change in, for example, the citizenship law we have witnessed this small change in the citizenship law. Even though in 2013 also we have witnessed this domestic draft law, this draft law against domestic abuse.
Yes.
Even though women have to say that we don't want to live in segregated spaces from any male that is not a member of our family. We don't want to be second-class citizens. We are adults. We can travel without permission. We can study and have higher education without permission. We can divorce and marry without permission. We don't need this male guardianship that is the system that is using us and that is considering us minor citizens.
Yes, and as you said, exploitation also is highlighted here. Religious leaders say that women are not allowed to drive according to Islamic law. But if that's the case, then one can say that there isn't any clear message inside the Holy Quran that actually highlights that point. Is that a more proof that they are interpreting Islam the way that they want to actually see it and not how it's really written?
Definitely, the people who are afraid of women to drive are creating a kind of interpretation of Islam for their own opinion to be just to find something to say. In fact, no, there is nothing written in Islam for women not to drive or for women not to participate in political life or in public life.
Okay, Mr. Rodney Shakeaspear, what kind of image is Saudi Arabia actually promoting or even giving to the Western societies or even to the world about Islam when they are applying such complex messages and applying such unuseful, let me say, royal decrees on women?
Saudi Arabia has the most negative image in the world. Everybody knows that there is no honor in Saudi Arabia. The people do not love the monarchy. There is no legal authority for the monarchy. There is no moral authority for the monarchy. And there should be sanctions on Saudi Arabia in exactly the same way there should be sanctions on Israel and on the USA. Those three are the axis of evil. And let nobody talk about democracy. A country like the USA, which supports Wahhabism, tells you what's inside the heart of the ruling classes in America. Corruption, bullying, force.
Okay, can we say, Ani, that a part of the picture or part of the image that we have today, of course, when asked Islamophobia majorly, when we ask others about what do they think of Islam, they immediately take the picture what's happening inside Saudi Arabia. They say Islam doesn't give rights to women and all these things that we actually highlighted. Do you think that Saudi Arabia is majorly to blame about the Islamophobia, or even for the distorted image that Westerns have in their minds about Muslims and about Muslim women particularly?
Well, what's disturbing is that Saudi Arabia is the birthplace of Islam, and the fact that our holy place is located in Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia, that in itself, whether we like it or not, whatever Muslims you are, wherever you live, it gives the impression that whatever Saudi Arabia does is indicative of Islam. And the difficulty that we have is I hate to be negative on Saudi Arabia, because I have Saudi friends who are incredible human beings and loving and very contrary to what we see is happening in Saudi Arabia. So I know better, but many people in America or in other parts of the world don't know Saudis, and they have a very negative impression of what Islam is and what Saudis are.
Is the Saudi monarchy majorly to blame for that image?
Yes, and also the powers. It's not just the monarchy, the whole system, right? Because you have the clergy that exudes so much power, and the things they post, and when on the situation about allowing women to actually apply as cashiers, there was a clergy in Saudi Arabia that tweeted, and he had 97,000 followers, and he tweeted, "Let's assault these women so that Saudi women will not apply for these positions." What? And are you kidding me? You are encouraging your male followers to sexually assault women cashiers? This is really disgusting. Okay. And they call themselves Muslims.
Okay,
I mean, what kind of Muslim would do that?
Okay, Aly Zonneveld, co-founder of Muslims for Progressive Value, joining us from Los Angeles. Thank you very much for the information that you gave in cases today. Dear viewers, we will take a final break and be right back.
Time. Variable. Event. The only constant variable in life is change. Broader perspective. Arguments and counter-arguments on our platform.
Global Insights. The globe on our platform.
Welcome back, dear viewers. According to Al Madina newspaper, Saudi authorities arrested 14 women for driving in the kingdom on October 26, 2013. News agency says in 1990, some 47 women took to the streets in 15 cars to defy the ban. They were detained and some even lost their jobs. According to Saudi clerics, medical studies show that driving a car harms women's ovaries, if that's what they believe. Of course, this is a continuation of more obstacles placed in place, or placed even in facing women, or in the road that woman wants to actually take. Rita, do you believe that the fact that women in Saudi Arabia are exposed to Western culture, even the new generation, are developing among Western developments, or even having their own social media interactions and reading more, as you highlighted, is this the major factor today, speaking about the new generation inside Saudi Arabia, women specifically, is this the major reason why they felt that, well, we can call for our rights? I mean, freedom is seen in other countries. Why not in our countries? Probably they have the courage more than the previous generation.
I think it's not because they are trying to copy the West, but because they felt that now they can create alliances.
Yes.
Why? Because they can go out of their house while staying in their houses through social media,
Twitter and
through
Facebook,
Twitter
yes.
and Facebook. This is one big point. Those social media tools helped women go beyond the segregated place where they cannot meet with each other or with other males and speak with each other and create common causes, like, for example, the driving, the right to drive campaign. But in my opinion, the monarchy lately has also worked for women's rights. My opinion differs from Annie and from your previous host, Rodney.
Yes.
Because the monarchy, it's important to highlight that first they named some women in the Shura Council. Now they have a good quota of 20% of women in their Shura Council. This is a good step, and this is the first step. The second step is like, it's true that the ministers, the Council of Ministers have drafted this bill against criminalizing domestic abuse. It's true that till now it's ink on paper, but first it's a first step. In Lebanon, we still don't have this bill against the domestic abuse.
Of course, I will take what you highlighted to Rodney here. Mr. Rodney, of course, Rita highlighted several amendments that were actually seen inside in laws inside Saudi Arabia. And here I have more to say. On August 27, the Saudi cabinet approved a law banning domestic violence and imposing penalties on all forms of sexual abuse. In September also, the cabinet granted foreign wives and mothers of Saudi citizens the right to receive residency permits. In October even, the Justice Ministry for the first time granted several women license to practice law, and last spring hired female staff for several administrative courts. And also in February, King Abdullah swore in 30 newly appointed female members of the Majlis Ashura, as of course Rita highlighted. Aren't these enough amendments, and aren't these brightful amendments to the Constitution that probably at one point or another can pave the way for more rights to be given to these women?
I think I heard you say that in August there was a law banning sexual violence and domestic violence. That means you are saying there was no law before.
Yes.
And that actually means that in practice, whatever the law is now passed, it will be a nullity. Because the problem is those Wahhabistic people who act on what they call social mores, which is outside the law. Any law in Saudi Arabia is a dead letter when it comes to ordinary people's rights. The real power in Saudi Arabia comes from the Wahhabistic assertions and practices. What we need is a cultural change and an intellectual change and a pinning of responsibility on those wretched cowards who would never dare look a woman straight in the face and say that I treat you as an equal.
Okay, Mr. Rodney, what do you think the major steps here should be made, in your opinion? If certain sanctions were placed by foreign powers or even by strong Saudi allies, speaking about the US majorly, do you believe if these sanctions are placed on Saudis, then definitely you would be seeing some kind of a reform on the ground concerning women's rights?
We have to go for making an impact, and sanctions is the obvious way to do it.
Yes.
And we need to have sanctions on the axis of evil, which is Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the USA. The whole mindset of the world is that sanctions can go on Iran and cannot go on Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
We need the non-aligned nations, of which Saudi Arabia is one, but we want the decent ones to stand up for decency and say, we've had enough. The Saudis are cowards and they're completely out of date. And as your other guests were saying, the effect of the internet in due course will mean that this regime is going to be overthrown. So they might as well go out with a bit of honour and let these changes happen, rather than trying to oppose them.
Are you optimistic here, Mr. Rodney, for the fact that women inside Saudi Arabia are kind of course, inspired by women in Egypt, by women in Libya, by women in Tunisia, how they stood up, and they also called for their own rights in the parliament. Are you optimistic about the fact that they can be inspired by the revolutions taking place next door?
I have no doubt that the ability in Saudi Arabia, the untapped ability, lies in the women. And once they become conscious of that, they will win through.
Okay.
Because they are up against something which is corrupt and corroded, and ultimately history is going to pass it by. So it's not going to be easy, but they will win.
Okay, Mr. Rodney Shakeaspear, political analyst and chair of the Committee Against Torture in Bahrain, thank you very much for being with us in Cases. Rita, are you optimistic too? Do you think it's the beginning here?
Yes, this uprising of women is paving the way for more women participation in public life.
As if it began with Manal al-Sharif and then it turned out to be 40 women also even joining.
Yes, we can talk about also Wajiha al-Huwaider. I love what she has done and how she is struggling to fight male guardianship, how she's fighting for the women's right, like political rights, economical rights. Women in Saudi Arabia cannot even work. Normally, their salaries are usually taken and confiscated by the family.
Yes, of course, in addition to social media here, definitely. You highlighted that from the beginning. Of course, because these women, if they wanted to achieve something, they have to take it to the public.
Yes, they use social media to take it to the public, but in fact, if they tailored their own uprising as for their society. I love what they are doing. They are tweaking, tweeting, Facebooking, but also they are creating changes step by step.
Yes.
In a way that their society and their own society will accept. Okay, so it's slow, but good.
Of course, here in the past also, Rita, to say, of course, these Saudi women took their case to international media, to international televisions. They even sent open letters to U.S. Secretary of State, to high commissions of the European Union. And of course, in order to help them to gain their own support, they even kept a lot of petitions on the social media, and a lot of people signed it too.
Yes.
But till now, we haven't seen that kind of a sufficient, major change here or the support. Do you think that when it comes to Saudi Arabia, we have to be patient with that?
Definitely.
Because we're not changing a law, we're changing a whole culture and traditions here.
What we are trying to change are the traditions, are the social norms that have been also interiorized not only by the society and the men, but by the women themselves.
Yes,
right now what we are witnessing is the uprising of the qualified and the very well the educated women of Saudi Arabia. But what we want is also the uprising of those who are rural women of Saudi Arabia, those women that we cannot reach because they don't have they are not literate, they don't have access to education, to social media, or even to computers.
Yes.
Those are the women also we want to reach, and those are the women we want their right back to them.
Do you think that Saudi women today are even provoked by the development or even the freedom given to some of Persian Gulf countries, speaking about Qatar, speaking about Dubai? Are they even provoked by that? They say that why women in these Persian Gulf countries do receive the rights while we don't?
While we don't. In fact, this happened in 1990 when
not going out far, but speaking about Gulf countries.
Yes, the Saudi Arabia women, when they observed those U.S. Marine driving in Saudi Arabia, they said, and in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, they said, why not? Why we can also drive? And in fact, the first uprising for Women to Drive campaign began in 1990 when some women took to the streets and took the wheels and drove. They lost their jobs, but this is how uprisings and revolutions get built, and this is how revolution are constructed, and especially change is made. Change is made slowly. We have to be patient, but those women have the will, they have the strength, they have the tools, they are well educated, and the good thing is they have the encouragement and support of their families.
Yes, that's of course a major factor here.
This is a major
factor. Of course,
factor.
Speaking also about Human Rights Watch and a lot of international organizations, how can they be helpful here, Rita? I mean, if these women even not only send and place their own cases on social media, but also send them to these documented and these reliable international rights or human rights organizations, would that be effective too?
Yes, of course, because those international organizations can make pressure on the government. What we want is the government to change the law, because what we want is the women to be able to change the laws. We want the legislation to change. That's why to make a true change, we have to pressure the government, to pressure the parliament, to pressure the monarchy
itself. And of course,
itself.
they will have the support of rest of the women around the world, not only in the Persian Gulf countries. Rita Chemaly, author and researcher on human rights, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
In Cases. Dear viewers, that's all the time that we have for today. And whenever those are persecuted, that place we tackle case by case. Thank you for watching.